Hello and welcome to the IdeaCast interview series, episode 25. My guest in this episode is Lorna Rose. And Lorna is a writer of narrative nonfiction and poetry. And in this interview, Lorna and I go on a journey of introspection and review of a life that presented interesting challenges and challenges that were overcome with interesting and novel approaches to self-understanding and awareness and self-discovery. So I very much enjoyed this conversation because it speaks to what I appreciate about discovering others' tales and their stories of adaptation and resilience. And I hope I'm whetting your appetite for what I believe was a very interesting conversation. Again, a novel set of experiences as had by Lorna. So please join us, and I believe you will come away having been inspired by this story. So thank you so much for joining us, and all information to access Lorna's work will be available in the description field below. So enjoy the conversation. And I'd like to welcome Lorna Rose to the IdeaCast interview series. And Lorna, I am so happy to have you here and to engage with you in this conversation. You've got some really interesting stories to tell, and I think your story is going to be of great service to those who come to this interview. We talk about resilience and overcoming adversity in childhood, your creativity, and your insights that you've gained in this path that you've wandered on and made good progress on. So welcome, and let's get right into it. I want to talk to you about the adventure that has been your life thus far.
Okay.
Yeah. That was a nice setup there, right? At least, dun dun dun, the adventures of Lorna Rose. But seriously though, you do have it's almost a heroine's journey. Was that over dramatizing it? I mean, you like a lot of folks, you've dealt with some things, but you've come out the other side, and that's what's I found attractive about where you are now, is that you found resilience, you found self-awareness. So can you share some of that?
Sure. So I grew up in a middle upper class suburb of Chicago. I grew up with 3 younger brothers. And growing up, my dad was not really around. He was working a lot. And when he was around, I would put him in the category of abusive, verbally and mentally. He would call me names, I was very intimidated by him growing up. I was terrified of saying the wrong thing, or upsetting him in some way. And I got to the point where I would be able to read the air when he walked into a room. And in this memoir that I'm writing, I call it Calculating the Tides. Just to see if, is he in a good mood? Is he angry about something? Is he am I going to get yelled at for something that's not my fault? And I grew, I'd say 6th grade. I grew very, very shy and very timid, and not just everything was kind of walking on eggshells, and I generalized that relationship with my dad to just about everybody in my life. I didn't want to upset anyone. I didn't want to surprise anybody in the wrong way. I felt like everyone knew more than I did. They were less complicated than I was. I also had a learning disability, and that was also a reason for my dad to bully me at home, and just another reason for him to call me stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And I internalized that for a long time. And then when I was 16, we found out that my dad had another family, and he had gone back and forth to another Chicago suburb for 14 years. He had 3 boys with another woman.
And you had 2 or 3 siblings with
3 brothers.
Your mother. Okay, 3 brothers. Okay. So that's quite a shock. And you were how old? 16 when you found this out?
I was 16, which is hard enough of an age as it is.
Yeah.
Without, another family. But, I never, my family culture is one that we just sort of sweep a lot under the rug. And so I just, Dad moved out and he moved in with this other family, and my parents divorced, and that was pretty much that. No one really talked about it. No one asked how I was doing. My mom did get us into therapy, which helped some. It wasn't terribly effective.
Right.
But that's kind of how things were. It was kind of the elephant in the room for a long time. And then I went away to college and dealt with things sort of in my own way, drank a lot. There was some drug use. I slept around pretty heavily, and I sort of continued this pattern. And a few years later, found myself out in Los Angeles doing the same sort of thing.
Okay. Going back to that flashpoint, that sort of, what do you call that? The world kind of falling in on you when you find out something like that. Did the other partner continue her relation with your father? This is an aside, of course. They did. Okay. And she was privy to this whole thing, maybe, or no?
I don't know. There's different stories. Different things came out in court. If she knew or not. I think she claims that she did not know about us. I don't know. That's sort of, everybody kind of has their own truth about that.
Sure.
They did get married, and they are still married today. This is, going on 25, 30 years. Okay. So I don't know. That's a question for the ages. I don't know if I'll
again, it's a sort of off as an aside, but it's also helping me to maybe understand. So would you guess that the behavior of your father towards you, and then this double life that he was leading, almost kind of speaks to a kind of narcissism, perhaps? Would you, and maybe this is out of bounds for, would this be some kind of manifestation of that, do you think?
Yeah.
Is securing 2 families?
Yeah. I mentally, narcissism or some personality disorder or something. I mean, something, pathological. That kind of just developed over his years. I don't know exactly how or why, but yeah.
And I ask this for the audience because there may be people coming to this interview who are sorting things out, maybe not as dramatic as having a ghost family in your life, but just the idea of what a parent can do to us. And just understanding some of the backstory might help others to sort out their condition. So I'll cite an example in my life, because I do draw some parallels between our lives. I had the maternal abuser, and and you said sometimes you had to sort out the tides or the atmosphere when he came in the room. And my father always said that with this parent of mine, that he never knew if he was going to get the princess or the shrew. So you never knew what was going to be on offering that day or that week
Mhm.
or whatever. And that
Mhm.
so do you know what his family background is, perhaps? And again, I ask this again for perhaps the consumption of the audience. Was he the subject of a sort of a generational abuse pattern, or do you know if your
Maybe.
paternal grandparents were just nice average folks, or
No, I mean,
not a big deal? I'm just curious.
yeah, nothing is obvious
Okay.
is jumping to my mind.
Okay.
Um, my grandparents both they were very proud of us grandkids.
Okay.
Um, and really just, I mean, that we were like their lives,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so I think my dad just wanted to be seen in that arena.
Okay.
And as deranged as it was, I think he thought, well, this is a way I can be seen. This is a way I can get approval, more grandkids type thing.
And obviously, I'm guessing, and I shouldn't say obviously, but I'm guessing they were aware of what happened. And did they realize they had two sets of grandchildren, or?
It that all came out
Mm-hmm.
all together. Like
Okay.
they didn't know, like, prior to us knowing. It's not like it was their secret. It was like it all came out at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's got to be a hard one to sit with as a parent, that your son had this sort of multiplicity of union, these two separate families. Anyway, it's your story has this anomalous event or a series of events. And so I wanted to pause on that for a minute, just ask a
Sure.
couple of
Sure.
background questions, because
Yeah.
it's fascinating. And I say that in a sense that I'm intrigued by human nature. I'm intrigued by how things come to be. And so, what sort of brought things to you essentially having to sort through all of this in your life as a teenager, already going through the maelstrom of adolescence and accepting yourself. I know in another interview you mentioned that on top of a lot of the other stuff that he would foist upon you, is that there was your feminine identity had been shaken a little, I guess, by his saying things to you that most of us would regard as being inappropriate for a father to say to a daughter. So there's that
Mm-hmm.
as well. So I guess for the audience's sake, you're heading out to California, you're leading what I would say is probably a hedonic lifestyle. And I lived that lifestyle to cope and self-medicate. So I say that without an ounce of judgment, because I went
Okay.
through a very extreme form of that myself. So anyway, that's on top of all the other things that you dealt with. So you're moving to LA in college years,
Like
or
mid-20s.
mid-20s? Okay, so
Yeah.
just past that a little bit. And then you were in the corporate world for a little while. Were you kind of in that sort of state between college and getting into a corporate career? Were you just sort of getting yourself put together in terms of jobs, or would you go right straight into corporate after
I
college?
went straight into corporate actually after
Okay.
college, and that was something else. Like that's not. I'm not really this. I don't know. I'm not really a corporate person. Like
Okay.
I'm very happy being a writer, but back then, graduating college, I spent into my young adulthood wanting my dad to notice me, even
Okay.
after all of this. And my dad was a corporate guy himself. And so I went to work for these large companies because I thought that's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get promotions and accolades and stuff, and think, oh, my dad's going to be proud of me. As immature as that sounds, even after, or especially after everything that happened, that's kind of where I was.
Okay.
So I spent a long time, the better part of 10 years, working for these large corporations that I didn't particularly enjoy. I mean, I was somewhat successful. I made some good money. It was a steady paycheck, which
Right.
I'm thankful for. It wasn't really me
Yeah.
at the end of the day. I mean, it was kind of, I found it actually kind of soul sucking.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine, especially if you're a creative. I think you have to have a certain mindset to go the long haul with corporate work or work that relies upon sort of analytical thinking or strategy or anything like that. It takes a certain kind of person to do that. And I respect that because I call it chronically self-employed. Like I don't fit in corp. I worked for Disney for a few years and I hated it. It was but closest I ever got to the military. I just couldn't deal with it.
Oh,
So,
geez. Yeah.
well, you know what I mean? It's a
Sorry.
Mickey Mouse
I'm not
military,
a fan.
but
Yeah, no.
it was all top down and you had no say in anything, even though I was sort
Mm,
of, mid entry level management. I was a chef. I'm a creative person, but everything was sort of very controlled. And so, yeah, there wasn't a lot of room for you being you, and you just conformed to
interesting.
what that. It was a good experience. I mean, from a culinary standpoint, I learned a lot. A lot of chefs came in and out of the kitchen that I worked in, and I learned a lot. So it was a great experience, but it also showed me what corporate mentality is, what corporate structure can be.
Mm-hmm.
And from a culinary perspective, it wasn't office work by any stretch, but it's still same kind of flavor, I think. So you're in this corporate environment, and you're hoping to gain the attention of your father, which I came out of a narcissistic parent-child relationship, parent-young adult-child relationship. And I understand that desire to please or to satisfy or to get recognized. And I think you said it wasn't forthcoming. It wasn't ever really, there was no reciprocity there, or there was no exchange of,
Mm-mm.
that's my girl, I'm so proud of you. And I think that again speaks, that's why earlier I was curious to know if you thought maybe he was dealing with some kind of grandiose, perhaps narcissism
Oh,
to,
big time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that kind of smacks of that. So again, I say that for the sake of the audience, if people are coming and getting some good takeaway from your experience in life and what you had to go through. So you're in corporate America, you're partying like a rock star, which some of that's youth and some of that is, like you said, it's escape, it's self-medication and perhaps a little self-loathing. I don't know. That's why I did it. you know, I was pretty much a nihilist as a teenager and early 20s. Like I really had no will to live. I just kind of went through the paces and got as high as I could, for as long as I could, and drank and did every drug under the sun. So it was fun, but it didn't really lead to anything.
Oh, it's terribly fun.
It is. Yeah. I was fortunate, and I don't want to romanticize it. I never found myself addicted. The only thing I ever found myself addicted to was cigarettes. And I quit that at 24 because I knew that's just a bad road to go down. But I did all the heavy drugs of abuse, and I was pragmatic about it. So if I did narcotics, it's one day a week, and that was it. You would do your heroin one day a week, or your OxyContin or methadone or whatever was on hand. Yeah,
That's pretty disciplined.
I never shot up. But you could smoke and snort heroin. But yeah, that was it was a very perverse psychology. You can only get high on this. But anyway, I did it to sort of preserve myself in the sense that I didn't want to become an addict. Like I knew addicts, and I grew up in the 70s when heroin was a huge problem, or cocaine in the 80s. And so I sort of had some sense about it, but I was still nonetheless very self-destructive and very much wanting to, like you said, medicate. But so anyway, I say that just because I didn't want to romanticize drug use, because it's very problematic. It has baggage.
Mm-hmm.
So there you are, you're in Los Angeles working corporate America, partying, and you had an interesting kind of trajectory shift in your life, and that involves AmeriCorps. Would you like to open that up and go into that a little bit?
Sure. So, I was doing my thing. I was convinced that I had this fabulous life. The other thing I did in LA was I would had this fantasy life, and I would fantasize that I was this model / actress type. And I was very sought after, very famous. And actually I would sit in front of a mirror every night after work and interview myself and pretend it was the media interviewing me. And part of that was like, I knew it was a fantasy. It was just sort of, me like in kind of the, starstruck and caught up in like the Southern California life. And then part of it was preparation for when the actual thing would happen, when I would be discovered.
Yes.
So I did that. And then, I had the friends and the dates and the clothes and like the whole thing going on. But after a while, something started to feel off, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but something started to feel like, gosh, is this it? Is this really, is this it? Is there more for me out there? Is there something else I should be doing? Because I kind of feel like there is. And so one night, in my mind, I say, I just happened upon the AmeriCorps website, but I think it was like fate, like just, I'm on this website. And AmeriCorps, in case your listeners don't know, it's basically akin to domestic Peace Corps. So it's a large volunteer and national service organization. They do a lot of things. You can teach with AmeriCorps. You can work with homelessness. You can build houses. You can work with veterans. All sorts of things. There is a category of service that is like environmental stewardship, which is what I ended up doing, and that's basically trail work. You're working outdoors, you're working to maintain hiking trails, build new hiking trails, sometimes work along a highway, clearing brush. So I see this job description, I'm sitting on my computer, and it's in Alaska. This particular position is in Alaska. And what it was is you would move around the state. You would travel the state doing different projects, staying 2 to 3 weeks at each project site, and camp. Okay. Like there was no housing. You would just camp, and you would be with a crew, of like maybe 8 or 9 or 10 other people. And I still remember seeing this job description for the first time. And how I describe it in my memoir is something inside me bolted upright and paid attention. And I had never felt such joy in my adult life than I did looking at this job description for AmeriCorps.
That's neat.
It was like, wow, this is it. Is this it? Because this is it.
Yeah.
And before my thinking brain could jumped in
to intervene.
Said, no.
Good for you.
My intuition was like, this is it, man. You're going.
Yeah.
You're already gone. This is for you. It makes no sense. It makes zero sense. I'd never camped at this point. I'd never spent the night in a tent, never done manual labor. But this is it. This is what I'm going to go do. And I was terrified. Absolutely terrified. But I could not, from that moment on, I could not stop thinking about it.
You knew you were dialed into something, here's to your intuition, because it had overridden that probably the ego sense, like to get Jungian for a second, you're sort of driven by what should be, and this is your impulsive intuition jumping out off a ledge with no safety nets, like here we go. But ultimately having the greater wisdom to say that, if you keep down this line with your ego, you're going to wake up one day being 62 years old, having trudged through all of this, and I'm sort of guessing here, but I mean, that's probably maybe what was being weighed there, is that this is a break, this is a way to do something different. And if you come back and you still want to try to plow that field the way you've been doing it, then so be it, but at least you gave yourself that opportunity. So you pulled the trigger on this thing before you had a chance to rationalize, right?
I did.
To let that executive ego.
Well, my thinking brain then, it did kick in.
Okay.
And it was like, what? And it gave me all these reasons why I shouldn't do it.
Okay.
That I was going to miss friends' weddings, which I did. This was going to be over the course of 5 months.
Okay.
Was the duration of the service term. So I was going to miss friends' weddings. Like I was going to miss road trips. I was going to miss the beach and the warm weather and just California life,
Right.
the clubs and my friends and stuff. But it was like, I don't know, it didn't matter. It didn't matter because I was on to something bigger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, your to use a metaphor, your soul wanted a journey, right? Your inner self wanted to break out of what was going on, and that's laudable, because that takes a lot of courage, and especially to then confront your sort of executive ego sense and then rationalize to it why this is something you need to do, even though there's not much rationality behind it, other than in hindsight, you could certainly say that this was a game changer for you, and you ultimately reconfigured some aspects of your total being, yourself, including hopefully the executive ego or the ego self, so how did you win that conversation with that part of you that was saying, this is not a good idea? I don't know why you decided to impulsively override my wisdom. And
at the end, I mean, there was this, kind of like this superficial discussion going on between like my intuition and my ego.
Mm-hmm.
But, at the end of the day, I knew I was going.
Good.
And my ego knew I was going. I mean, I was roped in, from the moment I saw that job description.
Cool. That's awesome. How many people would have seen that job description and be like, yeah, right. They'll fantasize for about 10 minutes and then they're like, no, I'm not doing that. Scary. There's bugs, there's moose, there's
bears.
Yeah. God knows what up there. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that is so courageous and so awesome. But
I didn't think of that at the time. I just thought, I wanted to be doing something bigger than what I was. And I didn't know how sustainable the party life was going to be for me.
Right.
Yeah. So this was my way out. And I felt, I knew that I had some demons that I had not dealt with at that point. I knew that I did, but I didn't know how to deal with them. I didn't know how to look inside and how to set that ego aside, right? And be like, I need to change my patterns. I need to, I need to let go of some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I needed to. I didn't know how.
Right. And that was probably your intuition saw this opportunity and ran with it. So that's really amazing. So how did the party crowd react to your just coming in and saying, guess what, guys? I'm heading up to the Alaskan bush and I'll see you in 5 months.
Yeah. My closest girlfriend at the time, she was kind of like my my wing buddy at bars, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
I remember her telling me very seriously that I was gonna make it 3 months and then quit and then come home.
Okay. She was an
Yeah.
extension of that ego, essentially.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah. That confirmation.
Yeah, you're not going to make it through there. But I think that's a very natural reaction, especially if you're living in LA and you're living this suburban urban life. And, you know, what the hell, you know, that's like going to the moon. You know, I mean, to me, I guess, I don't know. Yeah, I guess each person's different, but I'm trying to put myself in that position where it's like, are you what? You know, you're going where and doing what for how long? And so again, just the tenacity and the courage is just it's inspiring that you would do that. And
thank you.
So yeah, I think it's worth noting because again, with people watching this interview, you know, impulsivity is good, but you know, it's I think then it has to be a dance or a marriage if you can sort it out in your mind, like what's the cost benefit on this, you know. And maybe you did have that phase where you're like, okay, am I sure that I'm not actually putting myself in imminent danger or harm? It's AmeriCorps after all, so they know what they're doing. And so I guess you would have that kind of internal dialogue. So a step down from the ego saying no, and then you're like, well, okay, so you know, how do I take care of my sort of existential boundaries and needs and things like that? So I imagine you went through that phase too, where you were just like, it should be safe. It should be something that, you know, I will not face grievous harm or anything like that before launching.
Yeah. No, and I read about AmeriCorps. I mean, I'm not an impulsive person. I mean, I plan things out. I think through everything almost to a fault. So, I mean, I researched AmeriCorps and I knew exactly what I was getting into.
Okay.
I don't know if they knew what they were getting into with me when they accepted.
No.
I still, because there was an application process, and I still don't know. Like, I mean, they must have just looked at my application and laughed. Because I mean, they did ask like how much outdoor experience you have, and you know, like how much you know, like how much time have you spent in rural areas. And I mean, you know, how much survival knowledge do you have? And mine was like, you know, does not apply, you know, because I don't have
none.
any.
Yeah, zero.
Right. I just do a dash. Yeah.
But I bet some smart cookie in AmeriCorps saw that you were in corporate America and thought, if this woman can handle corporate America in Los Angeles, in like the Shark Tank of Shark Tanks of personality, ego, narcissism, etc., you might stand a chance with a pickaxe and grizzly bears, because what you're contending with in corporate Southern California, I'm thinking maybe they thought that. They're like, well, this is a tough cookie here. She's been able to hack it in that environment, so why not put her on a trail and see what she can do. So let's get you up in Alaska and you're working. How did it work out? How was that 5 months?
Hard.
Yeah.
Physically hard. Physically, at one point I described, you know, because your commute to work is hiking 2 miles. Okay. You know, that's the commute, you know, to your job site.
Right.
And I remember describing it in my journal as like this particular commute is torturous. It was just pure torture because it's, you know, you're walking uphill for 2 miles and you're carrying tools and it's buggy and it's hot. You know, Alaska gets really hot. People don't realize that. Like in the summer,
sure,
you get all that daylight and it can get muggy and stuff. And then you got the bug situation and stuff. You know, the hardest part was being alone at night in my tent and not having the distractions. There's no TV, your cell phone doesn't work, there's no internet.
Yeah, no club kids.
Sort of, right. You're just sort of alone. I mean, you're totally alone, and you're at one point it got so quiet, there was a buzz to the air.
Wow.
That's how absolutely silent it was. And I had never experienced that before.
Wow. What a
Yeah.
180. What a 180. So antithetical to, the what you were status quo months before, just going into that environment. But that is so like stoicism with a little sprinkle of Zen going on there. You just boom, I'm confining myself to this environment of solitude essentially. With the exception of the daytime when you're working with the gang on the trail or whatever. But yeah, that's admirable that so what effect did that have on your psyche to do that repeatedly for 150 days or so, 5 months?
Yeah. You get real comfortable with yourself.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And I mean, I knew I needed that, I learned how to live in the present.
Nice.
I had never lived in the present before. I mean, not since I was a little kid.
Mhm.
I had a lot of anxiety as an older kid and then a young adult, and then I think that speaks to why I interviewed myself in the mirror all the time. Reality and the present just was not worth living in.
Okay. So that's your first reward for your heroism in going up to this alien terrain and not really culture because there probably wasn't a lot of people around. So you mentioned journaling a moment ago, and I want to bring in the fact that you are a writer and that your writing started early in life. And I think in researching your work and that you took up journaling in Alaska. You weren't necessarily a journaler beforehand, right? When you were living in LA and things, or did you have journaling going then? So this essentially sprouted in your experience up there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I was a little kid, like grade school, I was a writer. And I wrote these little short stories. And I actually was one of those nerds that won like Young Author Awards.
That's cool.
And stuff. And but I put it away for a long time. My family's mostly businessmen and engineers, and being creative wasn't encouraged.
Sure.
The answer was always black or white. It wasn't, there was no gray, no nuance or in between or anything. And that's what a lot of writing is. It's writing about the gray and the I like to say, because the gray is where humanity lives. But I didn't stick with the writing. I put it away, and then I think I got it back out again at some point, and then I put it away again, and when life got busy and whatnot. But in Alaska, I really I think a lot of backpackers and kind of habitual campers do journal.
Okay.
It sort of enhances, I think, kind of their journey and being able to sit in the present, and sit with yourself. I think that it sort of is an extension of that. And so that's what I did. I started journaling just about feeling myself change and what that was like, and what my fears were around that, my frustrations with myself and with my crew. I mean, and they're fabulous people,
right.
And we we all parted on good terms. But when those are the only people you see for like days or weeks, there's going to be squabbles, there's going to be frustrations.
Oh, sure. It's like creating an instant family, and then you've got to contend with them, or a tribe, if anything, and there's conflict at times, right? A lot of personalities. That makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Yeah. But that's another, if you want to say blessing or whatever, that you immersed yourself into, is to then confront honest, probably more authentic relationship than maybe what the club scene might have offered you, or
oh, definitely.
More superficiality to the club scene than you would have having to deal with people, in the bush up in Alaska. So that's another good. I'm seeing another good takeaway from that immersion that you generated for yourself. Yeah.
Wow. So journaling, kind of led to writing. I mean, not right away,
Hmm.
but I would say that was kind of the beginning
Okay.
of my current writing journey, was the journaling in Alaska.
Yeah. And to touch base with the present moment of where you are now in your life, that you are an accomplished writer. You're a great writer. I was reading some of your stuff, your poems and your blogging and things like that.
Oh, thank you.
And well, yeah. I'd say that somewhat, that I'm not, I'm not a literary person in a sense. Like my whole life is, I've never been a fiction person. I don't know what that says about my personality. Like as a kid, I didn't read at all as a teenager, except for whatever I was forced to read in school. But I didn't come to reading until I was in my early 20s, and I took up with palm horticulture of all things. I moved to Florida at 21, and I noticed palm trees, and I thought, oh, and there were different ones, and so I went right down a deep vortex of palm botany and palm horticulture. So all I was into was technical journals and publications, and anyway, that related around that topic, and then but I never took to fiction, and to this day, I think the closest thing I get to fiction, which isn't fiction at all, is philosophical treatises of this, that, and the other, and it's still very technical, but it's more abstract. It's more, just the mind at work, rather than this is a seed of a blah blah blah. So, but you're describe yourself as a writer. I don't want to misrepresent. What is your
Sure.
writing like today?
Well, so I write narrative nonfiction, which is memoir, personal essay, stories, narratives that are true.
Okay.
And also write some poetry. My book length work, my current work in progress, is a memoir.
Okay.
And the theme is my journey from LA to Alaska.
Mm. And then you're in Washington State now, right?
Correct.
Where you currently live. So we have a joke here in Florida that a lot of people come down from New Jersey and New York. They put in about 5 years in Florida, a couple hurricanes later, a couple serial killers later. They're out of here. They hate Florida and the bugs and the Gila monsters and all the things that we have down here. And they go to North Carolina. And so the joke up in North Carolina is called halfbacks. So you kind of almost did a halfback, like you kind of got somewhere between Alaska and Los Angeles, and you're in Washington State. Now my dad lives up there, and one of these days I'm going to get up to Washington.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah, it's a beautiful place. We've got 5 inches of snow right now.
Yeah. As a Floridian, I'm like, yeah, if it gets below 70, I'm a wimp.
Oh, but it's beautiful.
Oh,
it's
I know.
Beautiful.
My partner and I always, like, we watch the Aurora Borealis cams on YouTube, and we're like, we have got to go. Cold be damned, we're going. I don't care if it's 5 below zero. So I'll just pick the big snowsuit.
That's amazing. The Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights, they're incredible.
Do you get them in Washington, or did you have the privilege of seeing them in Alaska? Oh, yeah, that's so cool.
I did.
Oh, that's so neat.
It was incredible. It was, I remember my whole body was shaking.
Wow.
Just
that's
watching
so neat.
these.
That's so
and
neat.
It's just, there are no words.
Okay.
There are no words to describe just the magic and the beauty of them.
That's beautiful. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's on, if I have a bucket list, that's one of the things I want to do, is go somewhere way the hell up north, probably Canada or maybe Alaska, since that's closer, and just hang out with that for a while and just be really blown away by that show, by what you see. Because even on YouTube, it's neat.
Unfortunately, you have to go when it's colder.
Right. Yeah. No, I'll look like the kid from Christmas Story with the suit, where he's walking out. That's going to be me, because it'll have to be 95 degrees inside, or my body will be like, because like I said, when you move to Florida, and I've lived here almost 31 years, things change. They say your blood thins. And so I'm just a wimp when it comes to cold. I went to Santa Fe about 4 years ago, and it was in the 20s. And it reminded me, it wasn't bad. I was only there a few days, but it just reminded me of the first 20 something years of my life when I lived in Virginia and Maryland and like that. So I can deal with it, but it's just, I joke that I have no tolerance at all. I can work outside in the summer when it's hot here. That doesn't bother me, but yeah.
Oh man, see, the heat gets me. I can't do the heat. No. Yeah, and the humidity, oh, forget it.
It's taxing. So the only time I get upset is in, say, October, when it's very nice up north and it's still 92 degrees with, ridiculous heat
Mhm.
index and you're sweating. And I work
Oh
outside.
man.
Yeah, I work
Yeah.
outside, so it's tough. So going back, because I have a tendency to, I'm ADD all over the place. You're in Alaska. You've had some profound experience, some sort of self-awareness experiences, and some present moment, being present in the present moment. So where did that take you after that? Let's do a little more of your
Sure.
biographical line here.
So after I stuck it out. I there were so many times where I wanted to leave. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to quit. I said, okay, I'm quitting tomorrow. This is just physically, it's too hard.
Yeah.
Mentally, it's too hard. I'm done. My warm bed I've got a warm bed in California and I've got uh, warm clothes and what am I doing?
Right.
But I stuck it out, and we did have some people leave. I mean, I don't know what the rate is for AmeriCorps. I mean, I know Peace Corps is a large percentage do leave their assignment early. I don't know what the rate is for AmeriCorps. I don't think it's as high, but there's still a percentage of people that don't serve their whole term.
Mm-hmm.
But I did, and my whole crew did. I
Wow.
think there were 9 of us,
Okay.
and all the other crews had lost at least one person, but we all stuck it out together till
That's
the
awesome.
end.
That's awesome.
They all put up with me for 5 months.
What was the gender split? I mean, were there men, women
Yeah,
ratios?
I think it was pretty equal.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I was 27 when I went.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was 26 when I went. I turned 27 when I was there, and I was kind of on the older end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, people can do AmeriCorps. Like there's no like maximum age.
Okay.
I've heard of people in their 60s serving,
Okay. Good
Yeah.
to know. Good
Yeah.
to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if I had the space in my life, that would be fun to maybe not necessarily have the amazing experience you did but I think that would be my inspiration, is to break out of a cycle, go do something, have it structured enough where that's not something I have to worry about. So I don't insert myself somewhere completely without any sort of organization, and have them sort of set up. So in other words, they can put me in a work camp and I know what my assignment is, and then I can focus on sort of dissolving myself or doing whatever it is I would need to do.
Yeah. And now that you say that, I mean, part of my learning how to live in the present was things related to my current existence that I had to do. For instance, pumping water.
Mm-hmm.
And during the workday, sort of, I don't want to say rationing water, because it's not like we're like in a desert and we're going to die.
Yeah.
We're running out of water quick. But just being mindful of things like that. Not showering for 2 weeks, and it's no big deal.
Yeah. Sure.
And little tricks to stay warm at night. Things like that I never had to think about before. But it kind of puts you back into the present moment, because you have to think about those things.
Yeah.
You don't have running water. You've got to really be mindful of your water usage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Responsibility for it's planning and responsibility, I guess. And knowing that there's not a 7-Eleven down the street to bail you out. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
You have to be a little more resourceful. And then you even mentioned in one of your blogs, I think, that somebody had gifted you with some moose, or was it another mesofauna, some kind of larger creature?
It was moose and caribou, I believe.
Okay.
It was a hunter. He was a local in one of our towns. It was actually our first town, called Central Alaska.
Okay.
It is northeast of Fairbanks, a couple hundred miles. So it's out there. It's at the end of the Steese Highway, and a highway in Alaska usually means a gravel road.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something else I get used to.
Right.
You know,
different terms.
yeah. And he, he had homesteaded the land for generations. I mean, he is what's called a sourdough. And a sourdough is someone who has been in Alaska for a long time.
Okay.
And their family's been in Alaska. I mean, this is like generations, you know.
Okay.
And on one of our last nights in town, he had my crew and I over for dinner for burgers. And I didn't necessarily question what I was eating, but I did notice a difference. It was, the meat was, it was very moist. It was chewy. It was kind of spicy. And it's not something I had experienced before. And I felt afterward, I felt just very nourished and strong. And then I found out it was moose meat that he had caught himself. Yeah. And at first I felt really sad, but then, you know, I mean, I want to be like, you know, everybody else that just thinks their meat comes from the grocery store.
Magic.
You know?
Yeah.
It lives in a styrofoam package.
Right.
You know?
Its whole life. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, you became more intimately connected with what had once been a creature. And yeah, I like that, because that's an awareness. Like you said, not everybody has that awareness. They think burgers just magically assemble themselves. And actually, I guess science is doing that now, where they can grow that stuff in a lab or whatever, but still, nonetheless, right? Like lab meat or whatever.
Right. Yeah. But, you know, it was kind of a moment for me, because, you know, here I was eating moose and, you know, reconciling my feelings about, you know, how I am regarding that. And then here's this hunter who is sharing his kill with us. Yeah. And he's sharing his bounty with us. Yeah. And he's in community with us. And it's a beautiful thing. Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, I've shifted to a mostly plant-based diet for myself, but I also grew up in rural Virginia, and the exact same thing would happen a lot, where people would bring you packs of deer, and after November, and when the deer season was through, and we were always grateful, because my single parent that raised me and we didn't have much money, and so to get anything, you know, offered to us was a gift. And so yeah, I can kind of connect with you there, that you just have to have some humility and know that that's a gesture of kindness, and it's somebody giving of something, because, you know, I'm sure in Alaska you can live and die by choices or lack of success in hunting and so forth, you know, or maybe not die, but, you know, just not have a really crappy winter, which is what, 7 months or 8 months up there. So yeah, so the fact that he did that, is absolutely a gesture of kindness and generosity for sure. And so, speaking of the sourdough man, the hunter, I know you work with the idea of resilience. And so this obviously bred some resilience in you to go through this 5-month journey. Do you want to speak to resilience a little bit, maybe as a tie into this experience, but also overall in your life? So you've come from kind of a crappy, somewhat traumatic childhood with the father, and then you've gone through a particular mode of life experience in Southern California. Now here you are with a complete sort of 180 living your life. And I'd say resiliency was involved in all 3 of those modes of being, to survive childhood, to be a clubber in LA, and that's a different kind of resilience, but then to find yourself in the Alaskan wilderness having moose burgers and just seeing your life through a different lens. I think that all takes resilience and a bit of stoicism as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I growing up, I wasn't believing in myself was not instilled in me.
Okay.
The idea that I had a voice and that I had ideas and things to say, that wasn't instilled in me.
Mm,
That was all sort of swallowed up by my dad.
okay.
I spent so much time, just like I said at the beginning, calculating the tides and
Mm-hmm.
not wanting to anger him, that I never really got to know myself
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. And I really regard the moment that I saw that AmeriCorps position, and the moment that I felt such joy inside me, I really regard that as like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
like I had the wherewithal to listen to intuition and to trust myself. And I think those are the first steps in being resilient,
Okay.
is I knew where I was at, and I knew that I wanted different, because where I was at started to not feel so great.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to trust myself enough to listen to my intuition and take action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's self-care too,
Mm-hmm.
to trust yourself, to seek better for yourself. That takes a little bit of knowing of what your situation is, right? So that you see that there is, I don't know, disharmony or some sort of incoherence going on with the patterns of day-to-day life and so forth. That
Mm-hmm.
this motivation comes along to do a reset.
Yeah. And I think I carry that out now in my life now with writing. Writing has really been so affirming for me,
Mm-hmm.
because I've been able to sit with myself in ways that I normally couldn't.
Okay.
And I liked, you were asking earlier, kind of describe my writing. I like to write about things that surprise me, and might might surprise the reader.
Mm-hmm.
um and in doing so, my goal is to let the reader know that they're less alone.
Okay.
For instance, when I became a mom, I mean, there was so much literature out there about how great motherhood is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, motherhood's fucking hard.
Yeah. And
And that's exactly what I wrote about. I wrote
yeah.
about what's ugly about it, and
Mm-hmm.
what surprised me about it. Because, for my firstborn, I did not feel at all connected to him for like the first 3 months of his life.
Mm. And
I'm just, I was grieving my own life. I was exhausted. My boobs hurt.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But people don't generally talk about that stuff.
Yeah, they kind of
You
gloss
know,
over the details, right?
it's all about how wonderful motherhood is, and I should feel so grateful, and
Mm.
blah blah blah. And I really didn't.
Yeah. And you were 35 when your first was born, so it wasn't like you were 22 and emotionally immature, or your amygdala hadn't, or what was it, your cortex. They say by 21 you start to finally get your executive function in order, but you were 35, so you could reason very well, and so this is all very rational and reasonable thinking on your part, I think. And so yeah, the fact that it's not and maybe that's nature's trickery to kind of suppress that a little bit so people feel like, oh yeah, having a child is great, and there's no downside to it, or I'm being silly, but I think there almost is this sort of implicit psychology where, and I've heard from mothers that the reason that women have second children is they tend to have this amnesia behind, where they only see the sort of oxytocin moment and the bonding moment and so forth like that. And I don't know, again, if that's, however long we've been evolving, or intelligent, species for a couple 100,000 years anyway, that you sort of bury that shitty part of the motherhood and move on to that, here's my beautiful child, and what a joy, etc.
I mean, otherwise, we'd be a bunch of only children.
Yeah, or there wouldn't be 7.5 billion. There'd probably be just maybe a couple 100 million or something.
Right.
Because children is, having children is a bitch, and so, but you had a second child, and so you did move through that then, I suspect, right? And were able to sort it out, this downside.
She was a surprise, but like we were just going to have one, and I mean, not for the reasons I already talked about, just like for different reasons, just our lifestyle, and my husband's older, I was older, and but she's wonderful. I mean, my daughter, she really completes our family. But I like to write about things that are not being written about, that I feel like they should be more. And I like to communicate that you are not alone. Like wherever you are is okay. Wherever you are in your journey, however you're feeling is okay.
Again, I think that's one of the reasons I may have mentioned this earlier, that I was drawn to reach out to you for an interview is just getting a little quick bio on you, and seeing the opportunity there to present to the audience, to others, how one moves through experience, how one can have transcendence in moving past ostensibly being the victim of something, or having had a traumatic experience, or even a deeply dramatic experience. It doesn't always have to be traumatic. It can be a lifetime of stress. Every single human being encounters that. And so we all seek out ways to reason and ration with that, or to suppress it and drown it out, as some of us do, or most of us do from time. I guess it's on a spectrum, right? We all work through it, but that's one of my objectives with what I do, is to present stories like this, and present folks like you to an audience that can sort it out and be inspired by it, and learn new techniques, new methods. And so yours is writing. I think if I could, sort of bring it to that point, that writing can be cathartic, writing can be an investigation, writing can be exploratory, especially as you said, it's a non-fictional sort of essay. Is it that you are presenting a story that is based on anecdotes, it's based on experience, and we are, after all, creatures of experience. That's all we can ever do, is report experience. And so I think it's essential as a tool of healing and a tool of connection. Like you said, you were in community in a small camp in Alaska, and so it's scalable, I think. And when you connect with people that you can resonate with, or things are salient to you out of your narrative or anyone else's narrative that helps set something off in your mind, and you're like, oh, you can see a new insight. So I think that's from what I can, and what I can understand and bring back to you on your writing, is that's a really critical thing about your writing in this way that you do, is that you are bringing that to people. You're bringing honesty and experiential pearls to people to work with for themselves in what they're dealing with.
I like to do that for people.
Yeah, I think that's so valuable. I think that's valuable. And on that subject, as a minor segue, you do workshops, right? You had been doing with the writing associations that you are involved with the groups that you're involved with. I believe you had done a number of workshops with them. And is that something that's part of your future, is to continue with helping others to sort of hone that skill, or learn that skill of the authoring skills to do essentially what you're doing, which is started with journaling and then moved into a sort of a more technically proficient craft, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to. I really like teaching. I really like encouraging new writers. I had a writing coach for a couple of years, and he was very encouraging to me. So I like to kind of pay it forward.
Okay.
And I just really like teaching too. You know, I designed a workshop that talks about writing small about big things. You know, and kind of finding your way into an issue or into a story that you want to write about that's not overwhelming for you or for the reader.
And I think that's important because I think one of the byproducts of the information age is our ability to get convergently focused for, you know, a reasonable period of time has shifted a little bit. So in other words, we're kind of an ADD culture. You know, in the 19th century, a person could sit down with a book and probably spend 2 hours reading and it wouldn't be a problem. But, and even probably in through the middle of the 20th century. But I think once, you know, the rapidity of communication and all these other things grabbed our attention, that's almost a lost art, is to be able to sit and focus.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, and you know, authors today, they're finding that they can't write long novels anymore that sell because readers aren't reading 200-300 pages anymore, you know, to your point. So they're not being written, which I think is a shame. You know, I mean, no one's reading War and Peace anymore. You know, no one's reading the Bronte sisters. You know, it's just you know, and and the big thing now is, you know, you got to hook the reader right away. You've got to, you know, like do something in the beginning to get the reader's attention. Otherwise, they're just not going to read. Yeah.
And that is a shame because I don't think that vacuum is being filled efficiently or perhaps effectively with the little, you know, the little atomized bite-sized nuggets of information that, you know, we have on a site like Twitter, or, you know, wherever we're getting whatever sustenance we're getting, you know, sort of literary or mental sustenance that we're getting. It all seems, like you said, to be little packets versus something that you can really get engaged with. And I think I hope for a renaissance in that people, you know, maybe upcoming generations can rediscover that and consider, if anything, they could consider it ironic, you know, that I have this 1,400 page book and it's going to take me 10 weeks to read it because it's very thick mentally. And so, I guess we could hope for that. But in the meantime, I think if you can keep things digestible and palatable within the scope of where we are right now, that's critical. Because if you can convey a message in an abridged sense that's still impactful and still allows the reader to walk away thinking and processing what you've written, that's effective writing for this part of the 21st century. So that's awesome that you're doing that. I know your domestic obligations are going to be catching up with you soon.
Yes, I got to pick up the kids.
Can we do a quick little? So you come back from Alaska, and so was reimmersion sort of alien to you or bizarre? Or did you just kind of?
It was no. It was really hard. I remember landing at LAX of all airports, and it was like shell shock. I mean, it was like being dropped into a culture that's noisy and bright and fast, and everybody's so well dressed, and there's chain restaurants everywhere. And I had a friend pick me up, and he was, I remember he asked me how Alaska was, and I remember, like, how do I answer that question?
You got a week.
Right. And I remember him driving me to my apartment. I had sublet my apartment, and then stepping into my apartment for the first time in 5 months, and being like, I mean, it was kind of like, it was like kind of familiar, but kind of alien at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just really missed Alaska for a long time.
Wow.
And just I began my journey of relearning who I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
When you're 27. Well, I mean, at any age, you know, I sort of dialed back my friendship with some people, and some other friends that I became really close with that I hadn't previously. And I had no interest in dating for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. I was just sort of, I'm cool, you know,
Wow.
like I'm just chilling on Friday night. I'm going to read a good book and go to bed early, you know?
Wow. Wow. What a wonderful impact Alaska had on you then to,
Yeah. And I remember wondering if I was going to go back, like fearing that I was going to go back to the clubs and to the drugs
yeah. Yeah.
and have Alaska be all for naught.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't go back.
That's laudable, that you were able to do that. Especially again, you're in the environment that's, ripe for that. It's like, okay, well, I had my little, my Zen moment, and now I'm back, and I did a little bit of a reset. You could easily, in other words, you could talk your way out. You could bargain your way out of what you did. In other words, your ego could, that part of your ego could bargain your way out.
Yeah.
So the fact that you stuck to that is remarkable.
Yeah. You know, for the first time, I was satisfied with my reality. I didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't have to fantasize that I was an actress.
Mm-hmm.
I could just be, and it was satisfying just to be.
Wow. So something that just popped into my mind, that if people are watching this and they're like, well, I don't have 5 months to immerse myself in a sort of alien wilderness. I typically, every 3 months, I look at silent retreats, silent meditation camps and things. And, you can look for your region. And I almost think that this certainly isn't 5 months in Alaska, but like the other day I did it, and I found that there was a Jesuit monastic compound in like Wisconsin or something. And I'm not religious, but I would go there because they do silent retreats, and they almost look like kind of there's sort of this gray area between Catholicism and Buddhism, where there are these sort of Richard Rohr type guys who are sort of non-dual. So anyway, they look like that because they had this like mandala on the floor of their place where you could go. But I just think things like that for folks might be a minor way. And if you could do that like twice a year, and there are Buddhist camps and there are Hindu camps and some new agey stuff. But again, whatever's accessible to you regionally, that might be a way to dip your toe in the water of what you had done. And if you want more, or if you feel like something happened, then maybe that's an option for people, because that's something I feel drawn to. And living in South Florida, there are some things like that. And of course, COVID makes it difficult, but I'm drawn to that. I want to go spend at least 3 days without saying a word, eating, almost the ascetic life, right? Like cutting myself off. I don't drink, or I don't do anything like that anymore. So that's not coffee a little bit, but just to focus mainly on just shutting my mouth, being in silence, and just having to be forced to be with myself for a while, and reckon through that. So I offer that to people in the audience that that's maybe a more petite way of immersing yourself, and see what you think of it, and see what you come away with, rather. So I have in the description field of this video access to Lorna's website and her social media outlets. But can you tell us how folks can discover more about you? Because I'm hoping that we whetted their appetite to learn more about you and the work you do. And so I know you have to move on. So let's talk about how folks can find you and discover more about what you do.
Sure. Yeah. So real quick, you can reach me through my website, which is www.lornarose.com.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also easy to find on Twitter and Instagram, I'd say, are my two biggest platforms that I do.
Okay.
And yeah, I'd love to hear from you. I talk to parenthood audiences. My children are both neurodiverse, so
Mm-hmm.
I can talk to groups about that. I also talk to general audiences like this one about resilience and healing. I can talk to you more about AmeriCorps if you'd like.
Okay.
And then I do the writing workshops, as Justin mentioned, that I really enjoy. I'd love to do more. We'll see, what time allows. But yeah.
Nice. And to open up your website a little bit, you have permalinks on your website to other interviews you have done, other podcasts that you have done, and they can be genre specific. So again, neurodiverse children, motherhood, as well as writing and things like that. So there are options there to discover more of Lorna's mind and her work and what she does, right?
Yeah, my publications are on there as well. Most of them.
Yeah.
Some of them aren't online, but the ones that are on the website.
Okay. And is your memoir complete, or is it still in its production stage? Are you still working on it?
Yeah, I'd say it's a work in progress.
Okay.
I've been working at it for like 5 years now, so
Okay.
hopefully I'm almost done. That's another question for the ages is writers don't always know when they are done, when the story's complete. But I don't know. I think it is. It is.
That's true. I didn't even think about that because yours, again, it's a sort of biographic or autobiographic, non-fictional literary work. And yeah, right. So that presents almost a paradox. It's like, well, I can stop writing about my journey when I'm gone, but then it would have to be somebody else's take on my life.
A memoir is it's about a specific time in your life.
You can bracket it. Okay, good.
Yeah, oh, definitely. An autobiography is more I was born here and
a linear string of events kind of thing. But this is dealing with, okay. See, you're helping me to become more informed on this because it's babe in the woods. I don't know anything. So I did write a manuscript myself, and it's not anything about me per se. It's just my ramblings. But it's like 43,000 words, and I've read through it. I'm on my third read through, and it's so funny because when I come back to it, I'll give it a month, and then it'll take me a couple weeks to read through it. But I just have new thoughts, and so I do. So I could get forever in this sort of rabbit hole of editing where I would never feel like I've finished, because I take in new insight from other people and I'm inspired by different thoughts. And eventually I'm gonna have to slap myself and say, stop it, and then hand it to an editor who can just, brutalize me with it and say,
rip it apart.
Get a good editor and just tell me I suck or whatever it is that needs to be said. But anyway, it's an exercise, and I would encourage people to, and possibly discovery through Lorna's work, to be curious about that aspect of yourself, because I think unlike music and art, music is very, to me, is this, technical thing, and art does take practice. But writing, you can start right away, and it can be your writing, and you could journal as Lorna did in the outback of Alaska, and start with that. And that could be your first step or your first segue into a world you may not have.
Sure.
Yeah.
And one of the things I talk about in the workshop I teach is, you don't need to write about anything profound. I think people put this pressure on themselves that, they have to sit down to the page and have, and write the next War and Peace. And, you don't. You can write about your cup of coffee this morning, or you can write about your sister's trip, or like whatever, you don't need to be like, all like fancy or profound or deep, just write about whatever, because that will lead to other stuff.
Be a maturation process
for sure. And sorry, I really do have to get going.
Yes, absolutely. No, I know you had mentioned that before we started. Lorna, I really, really enjoyed this conversation. And down the road we can check in with each other again, and we can always have you back, and maybe you can talk about
Thank you.
mothering and children and family and so forth, because I think that's a great
Sure.
field to go over too. So thank you so much for your time. Again, I
Yeah.
really enjoyed this. I hope those of you who are still with us, I always say this again at every hour-long interview, thank you so much for staying with us, and please go check out Lorna's work. I think it's inspiring, and it will help shift your trajectory to whatever extent. So if that's something you're looking for, then this is a great place to make that discovery. So Lorna, again, thank you. Have a good rest of your day with your family, and we'll stay in touch. And like I said, all relevant information will be available below for Lorna. So, all right, and I'll say goodbye to you after we stop hitting recording, and then we'll get you out. All right, thanks everyone.